G'day there, guys and girls, and welcome to the latest episode of the Finnovator. I really hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. If you are, you can do me a really, really big favor. Reviews of podcasts are really important in podcast land. So if you have a minute just to hit the review button on the Apple podcast store, and if you haven't got Apple, Spotify will do, Podbean, and just leave a review, 5-star preferably, but give people a bit of a sense. Make some comments about what you like about the podcast, what you'd like to see more of, and what you get from it. You'd really be helping me out and I guess helping me share some of the stories that you've been hearing over these last few months or weeks, you should say. So without a moment's delay, let me tell you a bit about my guest today. Dean Holmes and I first met about 4 years ago when we ran a webinar together all about his decision to move to London and continue to run his advice practice. Now, you have to understand this was a long time before we all found ourselves in lockdown and kind of forced to get familiar with Zoom and all it can do. And it's interesting that a lot of what he spoke about in that podcast, about getting closer engagement, getting to know clients better, we've sort of come to see in recent weeks. We then, since then, did a bit of work together. And today's Finnovator is all about a little project that he came and told me about 3 years ago. We worked on it for a period of time, and it was called the Wealth Network. It is called the Wealth Network. Now, if you've heard the names Fox and Hare, or maybe even Pivot Wealth, you may have a bit of a sense of what the Wealth Network has already been involved in, responsible for. You may not have even known that Wealth Network was kind of the Intel Inside proposition in behind growing and building those businesses. And that's what makes this so amazing. For those of you who may have brought young advisors through your business, or maybe even invested and seeded another business, you know there are some real pitfalls that you can make when you do that. Building someone who gets really, really good at what they does and leaves, or alternatively seeding a business, and then eventually that tip comes where they kind of resent having to buy out so much money, something that they had a large part in building. Well, what makes the Wealth Network so innovative and amazing is how Dean solved these problems, and the way he was going to do it was exactly the same concept and idea that he came and we chatted about all those years ago. This was really, really good. Firstly, because listening to Dean, I could do it all day long. He's incredibly entertaining, incredibly insightful, and he really, really understands his take on what advice is all about and why it matters. But to hear the whole story, I think there are lessons to be learned from anybody who is innovating, who wants to bring through and build superstars, who wants to understand and leverage their systems. In particular, what I love is when Dean talks about the EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System. And as anyone who's ever worked with will know, I'm really big on having structure and systems and process. I think it's something that everybody should start working on. If not, they're already working on it, then start doing it as soon as possible. The old Chinese proverb, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is now. I think it works for systems. I hope you enjoy this one. If you want to know more about Dean, just type Wealth Network into Google and it'll take you straight to the site. And you can find more about the proposition, because I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about this business model and potentially other innovative ways of creating a new way of advice businesses, something which, as you know, if we've done some work together, if you've been following the blog for a while, I'm really passionate about. Anyway, without a moment's further delay, I hope you enjoy The Practice Factory with Dean Holmes. Dean and I can't remember when we first met. I have a feeling it was at an FPA event. And Dean's one of those people who you just he's very warm, he's very friendly, he's a great conversationalist, and we kind of hit it off and started this conversation. The first time we ever sort of did something together, he had moved to London and had made the decision to run his practice from London. And I thought that, given it was such a great case study to explore, and especially given recently, we're talking, I think 4 years ago, when the idea of servicing clients completely remotely was probably a little more unusual. And it was a great, great interview. It's still on the masterclass section of the members site. And then I think shortly afterwards, I can't remember, it was 3 or 4 years ago, Dean and I sat down and he told me about this idea he had, which is essentially he'd built a really good business in Absolute, spent a lot of money, invested in systems, processes, really got clear on how he wanted to engage clients. And he wanted to expand that, leverage that into being able to invest in other businesses. But he was also very, very aware that there were pitfalls to this. I talked about it in the blog I put out there. You can sometimes essentially create your own competitors. If sometimes you get to a situation where you seed other businesses, but there comes a time when sometimes the balance or the perceived balance flips. And when he talked about how he was going to do it, I just looked and went, that is a brilliant idea. It's essentially a startup incubator, textile for advice firms. And I had the opportunity to work with him on it for a period of time. But what's happened since then, and the work he's done is incredible. You will probably have heard of Pivot Wealth. You'll probably have heard of Fox and Hare. Well, both of these, without you maybe knowing it, are products of the Wealth Network practice factory, if you want to call it. And the way that they've approached it by not wanting to be front and center is really quite impressive. So today I want to dive into the history, the story, how he went about it, the mistakes he made. And I think there's a lot of opportunity here to leverage this into your own business if you want to get more efficient, if you want to sort of, create other people in your business who can take the baton. If you want to understand how they marketed it, how they approached it, all that sort of stuff, it's going to be a good one. So without any further delay, Dean, should we get this bird on the road? I don't know. That's not even a saying, is it? Get a bird on the road. Yeah, I'm just butchering metaphors, I think. Mate, how are you?
Hey guys, good morning. Very well, thank you.
Dean and I were chatting about the fact that he's doing the Steve Jobs thing. He's just moved in the house, and he's, as you can see, that lamp in the background, I believe, is one of the few pieces of furniture you currently own. Is that correct?
We have a minimalist lifestyle in our new house. So as you said, we moved to London, and so when we went to London, we had no furniture. We took furniture with us, but London is completely different to Sydney in that every house is furnished. Yes. So we took stuff and then didn't need it, so sold it either here or there. And then when we came back, we literally Googled furnished places because we thought it was a good idea. And then lo and behold, we found a furnished place to live in for the next 3 years. And so for the last 7 years, we haven't owned any furniture. And so we bought a house, and so now we're in the furniture market.
Love it.
We're trying to be minimalist, which so the room and the echo is achieving both of those.
Mate, I wish that I could go the minimalist route. Unfortunately, I married someone who doesn't like the minimalist. She likes the kind of everything everywhere. So, but if I actually went out the weekend before last and accidentally bought 3 Chesterfields. I intended to buy 1, so I've now got 3. So if you're looking for a place to store it, you can store a Chesterfield. I've got one handy. But anyway. Dude, thank you so much for your time today, and I'm super keen to dive into the story because it's a great path. But I guess it's like anything. There's the what it looks like from the outside and what it looks like from the inside, and I'd love to dive into a bit of that.
Yeah, of course.
I'm sure most people on here will know a bit about you, but let's just assume that some people don't. Can you tell them a bit about sort of who you are, who you work with, what the Wealth Network is all about? Just a high-level overview.
Yeah, of course. So 2 things. I wear 2 hats at the moment, but my history and my first hat that I have been wearing is that I'm a financial advisor. I've been a financial advisor for about 14 years. Started a practice with my business partner, Paul Barrett, about 12 years ago. That's now called Absolute Wealth Advisors. Was self-licensed, and we've been running that business for, as I said, 12 years. The business that I'm focused on now, and the other hat that I wear, and the hat that I'll be just wearing in a few months' time, is that I'm the founder and CEO leader of what we call the Wealth Network. And so this is our AFSL first and foremost. Okay. It's much more than that in terms of what we want to deliver to people that are joining us. Our message in relation to the Wealth Network now is that my focus is to lead the entrepreneurial revolution in financial advice. I think it's now time that the corporates are stepping away from financial advice, call them the big 4 or the big 5 or 6. And with the technology revolution that's come in the last few years, it's absolutely easy to start, run and manage your own practice. And we don't necessarily need the Commonwealth Bank resources to be able to deliver advice to clients. And so our objective in the Wealth Network is to be that back-end engine to help start, run and manage financial planning firms.
Love it.
So our target of people that we love to talk to is those people that want to have their own practice. So they want to be the entrepreneur in that context of going, I want to start my own business, but they don't want to do it all alone. And so we have a certain skill set in helping advisors and providing them with tools, resources, experience, etc., to let them be the front end of their business. And we help them in the back end of their business as well.
Gotcha. Love it. Can we go back to the very beginning?
Yeah. How far back?
How did you get into advice? I mean, like, how did you get started? Was it something you always wanted to do?
No, working in finance was always something that I wanted to do. So the real story that I tell of when I got exposed to finance and numbers is that my old man ran a bricklaying company for his whole life.
Yep.
At his peak, he had 50 employees, and back then you had to do payroll physically, not electronically. So my memories of learning about small business was sitting around the floor every Thursday night, counting money and putting it into pay packets, physically rolling the hundreds, 50s, 20s, 10s and putting them in envelopes.
You sure he was a bricklayer?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
well, you had to pay cash. This is the thing. Well, you can still pay cash now, but that's a different story. But when I was a kid, there was no electronic deposits in bank accounts. And so my journey of helping my parents in the business was that we did the payroll Thursdays. Dad took the little bag to work on Fridays and gave them all the money. The funny story is most of them had spent it by Sunday, which is common, and he was lending them money on Monday. But that's my first foray into just small business and finance in general. And then I had the message that I wish that my parents got financial advice like I give today. That, just like everything, small business owners, they're running so many different things. And they don't always get the right advice. And so my passion that started in Absolute Wealth Advisors is we love helping small business owners manage their financial planning side of what they do. But we always fall into talking to them a little bit about their business as well, because that is their wealth creation strategy. Everyone, every small business owner and people on here as well is they go, oh, my business is my super. That's a really common thing for the older clients. And so that was where I got started. And that's, I worked at Commonwealth Bank ComSec for a couple of years. That's where I met Elizabeth Kong, who's on the call today. So that's when that started. And then I got into advice relatively quickly after that. I worked with Andrew Rocks for an announcer for a little bit, 9 months. Cold calling wasn't for me, so I got out of that one relatively quickly. But it was a successful business model. Cold calling just didn't work in my world. And then met Paul, and I've been self-employed for much, much longer than anything else.
Love it. Can we talk about Paul and you, because you've got this really strong partnership, and you talk about him in very fond terms. How did you guys meet?
Unfortunately, he's not watching today, but I'll send him this part of the video.
Okay, let's get real. You've often talked about Paul in really terrible times in ways, when he's not. No, seriously. How did you guys meet? And because it obviously seems to work between you.
Yeah, look, it's definitely any business partnership takes a lot of time and effort. He hired me into the role that we started. So we started as like manager and employee. So that was an interesting dynamic. But when we went to the thing that he did first and foremost, when we went to start our practice together, is he drew the line in the sand and said that we're 50-50. And so that's something that Paul did initially. And there's a big age gap between us of about 12 years. He had most of the clients. I had no clients when we started our business. And so the first thing that he did was make it fair. And then the second thing we did is from that point on is that we did have different skill sets that we brought to the business. So we both had our core skill set of financial planning, but then we had different skill sets in relation to running the business of a financial planning business. Yep. And my passion now is obviously focused on running the business of a financial planning business. And that is completely a different skill set to being a great financial advisor, which is some of the things that we take into the Wealth Network today is that you can be a great advisor, you can then own your own business, but you don't have to. I teach all of the other skill sets in relation to running a business. So yeah, look, Paul and I have that different skill sets, which means that we have a good business relationship together, and we are good friends as well at the same time, and we've built that friendship over the last 12 years.
It's interesting because partnership dispute, I think, is one of the most common reasons that businesses break up, and it's unfortunate. It's such a massive destroyer of all sort of like wealth that can be created. It's like divorce, really.
Yeah, exactly.
What I mean, you're probably one. I mean, I would say there's more partnerships that break up and cause all sorts of negative impact than stay together. What have you learned about what makes it work and what you should and shouldn't do compared to what others people have maybe shared?
Yeah, look, we now have we use a coaching system or a business management system in our business, and we've been using it for probably the last 4 years on and off. It comes from the Rockefeller habits through that. If you've read about the Vern Harnish work, and now it's called the Entrepreneur's Operating System, or EOS.
Yeah.
It comes from the US, but it's here as well. And the core thing about what that has allowed us to do is we have a really solid operating rhythm within our company, and we have quarterly meetings. And there's one of the rules. It is 5 rules. I won't remember them all in terms of running this quarterly meeting, but the essence of what it is, it's actually open and honest communication and being uncomfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so those 2 messages is actually around making sure that whatever it is that you actually have the framework to talk about it, the time to talk about it, which is in these quarterly meetings.
Yeah.
And the objective is that you're solving that. And at different times, we've had these meetings facilitated by a coach that runs this particular program. And he also has a certain skill set of being comfortable in a really uncomfortable situation when Paul and I have disagreed on something. So it's the communication, but having a framework around that communication and a time to have it on a frequent basis.
I really like that, because I made a decision as a coach a while ago that I wanted to be comfortable playing in the awkward, which is sort of my way of talking about it. But when I deal with advisors and we talk about that first appointment situation, often in order to get people to act, you've got to create cognitive dissonance. You've got to make them realize that they should be uncomfortable about the things they want from life and the fact that they're not actually doing anything. And I think the natural inclination of a lot of advisors can be to try and, when they see that awkwardness and they're uncomfortable, to try and fix it. In cases, it can be the worst thing you can do, because you've got to
as an advisor especially, and in any situation, you just got to sit there and I have this thing that you've got to pretend that you're watching yourself from afar. Like, there's a little Dean up here watching Dean in this situation, because it just, that little distance that you create in your mind slows you down, and then you say things at the wrong time. I should use all this advice in all of life.
You're quite a visual person, I'm guessing.
Visual?
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I draw. I now have an Apple Pen like you, Stuart, and I draw pictures much more. And it's been a learning. Obviously, when we've moved into this working from home environment, I missed my whiteboards from the office, and so I am visual in that context.
Love it. You know what? We could talk about Absolute, because there's a lot to talk about there. We could talk about your market. We could talk about, the way that you approached, the starting point with advice. We could talk about the proposition, but I think this is about the Wealth Network. So what I'm keen to move on and talk about next. At some point, you woke up in the morning, and either over a period of time, you had this idea that I would like to take what we built and somehow leverage it. Talk to me about the kind of genesis of that idea, where it came from, how it developed. Was it a sudden thing? Give me the story as to
So the story involved alcohol. Part of the story involved alcohol, is where all ideas come from. Yeah. But first and foremost, how I got involved in mentoring, and this started before I went to London, and so I was. This is probably 7 years ago, is that I decided through some network that I would participate in mentoring with the AFA. And so the interesting story that happened there is that you've got all these young advisors wanting to be mentored, and then it was me who at the time was, say, early 30s, and then there was 5 other people that are willing to mentor, and they're all 60 plus. Now, yes, they have a lot of experience, but the younger advisors that were in that room at the time, not all of them could relate to the journey of a 60-year-old advisor, especially in the current world of what's changed. So I was doing mentoring through the AFA program, and that's where I met Ben Nash as our sort of first journey into the wealth network. And it evolved really from a coaching or mentoring perspective that I was working with Ben for almost 2 years, just in the context of that he was a great advisor, and I was mentoring him in the context of he was wanting to buy into his existing business that he worked for. And I was trying to help him facilitate that. Okay. And any advisor on the call, the history that we broadly have in terms of advisors trying to buy into existing practices is that it kind of takes longer than what the advisor thinks. The price changes lots and the terms and conditions change. And so it creates a frustration between the advisor and the older advisor or the business owner, because it just keeps getting moved along. So, and this was what broadly was happening with Ben as well, is that it just wasn't getting where he wanted to be because he wasn't getting ownership, and then he was building something that he had to buy later on. And so that kind of creates a little bit of frustration as well. And so coming back to the alcohol, we were drinking one night and having a whiskey. I still remember where we were, the whiskey bar in the city. And I just said, look, let's just do it ourselves. Okay. And really it came flippantly, as I said, I'll lend you a few dollars. Let's get started. Just quit your job and we'll start.
Love it. All right. At some point you made a decision you were going to work together. And I guess going from mentoring to investing in a business, that's a relatively big leap, right?
Not with whiskey.
So
from our perspective, it was a really comfortable thing. And the reason why it was comfortable is that we already knew Ben. Yeah. So I'd known him for 2 years. And so, our core in terms of values was the same as Ben's. And so that means that when you trust and know people, at that core, we're able to work out whether they are a good business partner. So from my perspective, because I'd worked with Ben for 2 years, absolutely, he's a great guy. Know, like, and trust him. And so it was very easy for me to go, well, let's go and do this. And the other thing in terms of the risk is that we know financial planning very well. And so for us, the risk was actually low because, yes, we were creating a competitor in one context, but we knew that if it didn't work out, that what we had created in that business could have fallen into our business as well. So we saw it as a low risk.
So there's a couple of things about the proposition, which when you explain it to me, I really just lit up and I went, that's brilliant. And I want to talk about them if you don't mind. And maybe you can correct me, or maybe I've got it wrong, but I feel like my memory is good enough. There were two main things which I think really hit home. The first one was that you were going to do its back-end support. And what I mean by that is, sometimes you see propositions like that where they go in and they invest in the business, but it's their brand, right? It's you're going to become ABC financial planning advisor and you grow your business. And what you have a situation, I've worked with a couple of people who are in this situation where they work really hard for a period of time, but at the end of it, it's not their business. It's not their brand. And they're essentially going back to starting from not quite from square one, but they're starting from a position and they've got to build a whole brand. They haven't been through that experience. So they've essentially invested a bunch of time building something, but it's not their own business. And the second thing which really appealed to me, I loved it, was you had built-in, what would we call it? Built-in expiry date. I've seen in the past and been involved in situations where a big business invests in somebody who's relatively fresh. And then as it goes, at the beginning, it's like, this is great. Someone's helping me get off the ground. But then there comes that point where suddenly you realize that they're starting to take the lead. They're starting to grow the business. And the support that's needed may start to fade a bit. And suddenly they've got a new problem, which is they've got to buy, and they're increasingly going to want to buy out the investor but the more they grow the business, the more expensive it gets, the harder it gets, and suddenly you get a position where there's completely conflicting desires and objectives. And that's usually where I've sat in meetings and had to untangle this before. It's not nice. You didn't do either of those things. Do you want to talk to this a little bit?
Yeah, so the back end support is really important because what we see in the future of financial advice is that we have the ability, and advisors are doing this, is that they're able to have a hyper-targeted, hyper-personalized client set. And so I have this one that if you want to target left-handed vets as your core client base, you can now do that, and you can find them and talk to them. So the hyper-targeted client set that you therefore track means that you need to brand it yourself, and you need to brand that you only look after left-handed vets, such that that's where it comes from. And so the ability to scale your operations is only necessary in the background. So clients, we're all advisors on the call, so we understand how clients will trust us, and they trust the person more than the brand initially, in that you sit in front of a client, they're having a personal conversation, they know who you are. And so the advisor is therefore, they've got that niche, as you say, but then they're able to brand it and market it and talk to the community about how they want to look after left-handed vets. The back-end system, clients don't see. So the fact that the technology might be all aligned between 5 businesses, they have the same back office support, they have the same power planning team that's doing all of the advice. This is all the back end stuff, like you said, Stuart, the intel inside, or the feet of the duck under the water. It's all the stuff that no one really sees. It's important from a business perspective, but clients don't care. And so what we do is we help the businesses in the background, and they are the front office. They create the branding, the website, the persona that they want in the front end, and then the back end is where we do.
So let's talk. The first bit's really the intel inside. Did you ever think about calling it duck feet?
No.
I like it. I'm going to see if the domain's available. Duck feet. Anyway, talk to me about them leading. There was 2 things that came out. The firstly, in order for somebody to lead the marketing, you're looking for someone very specific, because not every advisor, not every young person is going to be able to jump in there and suddenly start marketing confidently. But the second thing is that insistence upon niche. Talk to me about those 2 things and why that matters.
Yeah, look, I think in this, so to cut through in terms of the people that you want to serve, the niche is becoming more important, because of the way in which people are now seeking and searching for services. Is that the content, if you think about when you Google something, Google's now telling me whether I'm going to enjoy a particular restaurant or cafe before I arrive. And so consumers or clients are doing exactly the same thing, is that they're seeking out the advisor that can help them based on their circumstances. Yeah. And so the left-handed vet that we'll talk about today is kind of the thing, is that, hey, these vets are seeking out help from people that can have the experience in how to help them. And whether it's an age, a stage, an occupation, there's actually more and more different type of niches when we talk about them. And so it's very, when you focus on that, your audience is big, in that there's more left-handed vets than you could possibly serve, but you're able to find them easier today than you've ever been able to do it. And so that's a really important focus for us in that particular niche.
Love it.
So what was the second part, Stu?
Second part is how did you make sure that you were going out and finding people who were going to be able to get on the front foot, were going to be able to market themselves?
Yeah, absolutely.
There must be 1,000, wannabe business owners who fundamentally you talk to and you go, you're just not going to be able to get on the front foot with this. You're not going to be able to generate leads fast enough.
Yeah, correct. And so that's in part of our process of identifying people, that we need to identify the advisors that are able to tell their story quite well. So, and this is if we think about the businesses that we've started in the past, they're very not necessarily marketing focused, but story focused, that they're clear on who they want to serve and they're able to articulate that relatively well. And this is something that we're focusing on helping advisors going forward as well, is that we help them to be able to market their business, to understand who their customers are. We've got a whole sales module that we build for the practices, but still the partnership works when the advisor has some type of clarity on the niche and also some abilities to talk about that. We can the technology to talk about it is in existence. If you want to Instagram your story, you can very easily do that, but you've got to be able to tell your story.
Yeah, I love it. And there's some great resources out there. I mean, Russell Brunson has probably done a lot of work in here. I think is it story selling is another really good resource around this.
Yep. And that's really good for your niche. If you talk about how you've helped your particular client and you only want to serve those clients, guess what? They're attracted to you in that manner.
If you hit someone's website and they talk about how they're a best-selling author in 16 countries and they've been shaking up the financial service industry and worked with 1,000 clients to increase their revenue by $1.2 billion, you're not targeting a niche, you're not telling a story, you're just big noting yourself.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the built-in expiry date, because this was something that really struck with me. It's almost like an acceptance before you start that it's going to end in divorce.
Yeah, it's planned divorce, but it doesn't end at the divorce. It's like planned exit is a better way of thinking about it, is that we know that we create a significant amount of value in those businesses when we help them start. But just like any startup, it comes to a point where the business is a business now, and it's built its systems and processes, it's running on its own, and we say that part of our job is done at that point in time, and we want the advisor at that point in time to have the ability to own 100% of what they've built.
Yes.
Or built with us. So that's all. And that makes the objective there is to make everyone comfortable that this is a commitment or a marriage, as we say. It's a 5-year commitment to build this practice. But at the end of the 5 years, we let you go. And we still think that we have a licensee part of what we do. And so we still assume, but not demand, that the advice businesses might still be licensed by us. But that is not a requirement in terms of what we're doing.
It's, you know what? Imagine how better off AMP would be if they could take this idea that there is going to be an end to this period and they could put that in place. They would be in a situation where they wouldn't be at war with the practices, and potentially they could alleviate some of this risk they've got right now. But it's a smart move. And I guess it's one of those things where you look about it, you would rather have a situation where you get a chunk of something good rather than end up with a bad feeling at the end of it and trying to go for more and more and more. It was really,
and we leave value on the table, but we transfer that value to the advisor. So like if you exit the business and there's all the data of the guy who sold his Apple shares because there were 3 founders, right? And you go, yeah, of course, we're going to have that issue as well, is that we're going to sell part of the equity back to the advisors, and they might go on to have an amazing business. But guess what? If they go on to have an amazing business, it's mostly due to that advisor building that business. So we know the value of what we provide, and we know the value we create in building those businesses for the first 5 years. And then it's like, let them fly.
It's like Marco Pierre White, right? We know Marco Pierre's a great chef, but we know particularly he's a great chef because look at all the other chefs that have come out of his kitchen.
Yeah. Yep.
I totally agree. Can we chat a little bit about the blueprint? Because I think this is key. And there's certain things that you have in your business that you brought across, and this is what the proposition is. Let's say I come to you one day, I knock on the door and say, Dean, I want to start Love Financial.
Yep. Oh, I've heard of that. It's a great name.
Or, by the way, I bought advicefirm.com. I can't believe it was available.
Advice firm.
Advice firm. How's that? The advice firm. Anyway, And I turn around and say, look, you know what? I'm enthusiastic. I know a little bit. What are the things that you're going to bring to the table and pump into my business? And I guess the things that you're going to help me with and the things that I'm going to do that are going to make me go from, fresh and wet behind the ears to, industry known and $1 million revenue within 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're bringing to me first and foremost is the fact that you're already a financial advisor. So that in terms of what's going on is that you're an advisor already and you've got a few years experience. So the concept of what I'm not going to teach you anything in relation to salary sacrifice, nor can I add value there. The rules are the rules.
Yep.
But what we are teaching in terms of what we deliver to the businesses is we're actually helping you start and run and manage that business. And so from our perspective, that starts from actually your asset ownership structure, how you structure the whole ownership, how we set up the name and branding, how we set up the websites, how we open the virtual doors as it is today so that you can bring on your first client. Okay. And so what we're rolling into these businesses is a combination of everything that we've built kind of in Absolute Wealth Advisors, but tweaked depending on who your target client is. So, it's much, much more than what every AFSL might go offer you in terms of open APL and templates. We care very little about those things, although we might have them. It's actually the fact that you've got a cracking bookkeeper, so your numbers are taken account. We've got an ability for you to get paid in terms of charging clients. We've got all the systems in terms of how you develop an operating rhythm for your business. So what are you doing on Mondays? What are you doing on Tuesday? The next element of how are we marketing and talking to your potential customers? We build out a plan with you in relation to that. We have a whole, we run the entrepreneurial EOS system across each of these businesses. So I'm sitting in a weekly business meeting with the business owner or the financial advisor, and we're talking about the issues that they're facing. Not I've got to do salary sacrifice for a particular client, but we're tracking key metrics and key numbers so we know that the business is going to perform well. So every week I'm in the business talking to them, and then me and my team are solving some of the problems. And so this is the difference in terms of what we do, is that because we're in the business with you and we're talking to you about the problems that business is having, we understand it, but the big thing that we do is we help solve them.
Right.
Okay. And so from the perspective of from what I say is I go, oh, you should do that, you should talk to such and such, or you should build this in. I delete the word should, and I go, oh, Bentley will do that for us and he'll deliver it to you, or Carl will deliver that to you in your business.
Okay. Got it. So you almost like if you take a coach, he'll give you some of the IP, some of the templates and tools, etc. And then you've got a licensee who are there kind of saying you must fit in this model, and there's nothing. You guys are kind of in the middle.
Yeah, so we have, in our vision, we have two departments. We have a compliance department, and then we have what we call coaching and execution. And I think the two words are really relevant in terms of what we do. Is obviously we're coaching in the same way, in a way of we're coaching you to build an advice practice.
Yep.
The execution is the second part of that department, is that we're helping you do it. And that's the bit that I'm passionately focused on, is that there's no sense me going, well, you should have this. Because my interest and my remuneration is all linked on creating a successful business, not suggesting. And so therefore we go and build it and we do things for you.
And it's interesting. I mean, that's one of the reasons why early on you've been very, very clear about, okay, we're going to do this one and then we're going to do this one, rather than trying to do 50 or 100 or 200 at the same time. Correct.
Yeah. And I think that our ability to, in terms of doing them at the same time, would be no more than 4. And so really that's we run a accelerator masterclass process. We identify businesses that want to join us essentially on a quarterly basis, but we only would have 4 as a maximum joining us at any one time, so that we can spend the time to coach and mentor them through the program.
Gotcha. So in a 5-year period, you'd have 1 exiting, 1 coming in, 3 in the middle of the pipeline, and it would just cycle through like that. So you're basically bringing on 1 new project every 1.5 years.
Oh, no, 4 at a time. Because I'm retiring as being an advisor, we now have the capacity to bring on more per year. I would do no more than 4 every quarter, on a rolling basis.
So you'd have 4 rolling out, but that means that if it's a 4 to 5 year cycle, is that right?
Yeah.
So you're only really bringing on 1. You have 1 exit every year, and you're bringing on 1 new one every year. So essentially 1 new project every year.
No more. I'm going to bring on, because we're growing now.
Okay.
So we're actually the numbers of what we're doing now is that I would bring on at least 10 in the next 12 months.
Okay, gotcha.
Start 10. And so then I'm obviously managing those 10. But if we were bringing on 10 a year, that's the numbers that we're talking about now.
Okay, perfect. So I'm an experienced advisor. You're going to help me set up the business. You give me the branding, the website. Presumably there's some work where we sit down and we nut out who my niche is. Actually, how do you know that someone...
The advisor already knows, right? So my question is, tell me about your favorite client, and we can talk about that. Tell me about what you're really good at, and we understand that. Like, the advisor already knows where their core skills are.
That's interesting.
Or we do the other one and do the flip side and go, tell me about the client that you should have sacked, and then we'll talk about that. And it may not be so for absolute wealth advisors. And one of the things for us is engaged delegators. Doesn't matter how old they are in that context, but it's the personality of the niche that we want to target. Is that people that are engaged in the process, they'll attend meetings, they'll talk to us, they'll reply to emails within a timely fashion, but they'll let us do it. So that's a niche of a personality type that we will work with.
What do you think are the things that when you bring a practice on board, what are the 2 to 3 things that for you shift the dial most, either for them as individuals or as a business, that you absolutely have to get in place and on board?
So the biggest one that we have that I now believe in is actually having a virtual assistant in this virtual world anyway, but having someone with you on day one.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Positioning, first and foremost, you're positioning yourself as the advisor in this small organizational chart that you have on day one, is that you're not, no one's making coffee these days, but you're not doing the jobs that you shouldn't be doing. And so I have the message of start with the end in mind. And absolutely in the financials of what we build the space to have a person on day one.
Yeah.
So therefore, you're not doing the jobs that you shouldn't be doing, and you can spend more time on the things that you should be doing.
Man, that is so good.
And if you think about notionally, you go, well, I haven't generated any revenue yet. I haven't done this and that. We've got solutions for that in terms of helping to finance the businesses. However, you'll have so much more time to go and get those extra clients because you've got an assistant helping you.
You can't do the marketing and basically make the coffee at the same time.
You can't. And so our learning and leverage is absolutely that we help do that. But your staff member will sit in the same office with actually that work across the Wealth Network people. There's now about 15 people that work in an office in Cebu that work for different businesses of the Wealth Network. And so not only are you having someone start on day one, they go and talk to other people that know the Wealth Network's processes to come up to speed. So the fear about having a VA is like, I've got to teach them everything. No. Well, guess what? We have an insurance specialist. So if you need insurance quotes done, your VA will talk to Katie, who's another in our team, to train them on doing insurance quotes.
I'd take it far as say, if you're scared of having to train a VA, you shouldn't be growing your business at all, because that's what growing a business is, having to teach people the way that you want things done.
Correct.
And document it in such a way. If not, it's a lifestyle business. And I think you've got challenges there of its own. So get a VA first, position yourself correctly. In other words, don't do shitty low value tasks. Anything else that you really insist upon?
Well, the other thing is being focused on process. So the two things, like having your what we call a healthy ecosystem of people around you is really important. So that's everyone from the BDMs that you might work with to your bookkeeper, to your licensee or your coach, etc. Is having that team around you, but having a really strict process on how they all communicate and work together.
Yep.
So, the whole system for designing systems and process, everything that is needed in the business. And my regret in terms of starting 12 years ago is I didn't start processes until like 5 years ago. And we have the thing called the Away Way. So Absolute Wealth Advisors Way. It doesn't exactly spell like that, but we call it the Away Way. I've done a whole podcast with XY Advisor on it, but it absolutely revolutionized the way that we thought about the business and actually executed work. And so we start with processes in our business from day one. The masterclass that I did yesterday, in terms of the advisors that are coming through that now, I'm getting them to write some of their processes before they've ever made the decision to start their own business.
I want to push that. There's a Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. Second best time is now. The best time to start mapping your processes is literally start the process when you open the door, but if not, start today and start doing it. Similar sort of thing. We have a rule in our business that if it looks like we're going to do this more than 3 times, it needs to be mapped out. And I don't know what your view on this is. If you haven't sat down and had to either dictate or sketch or just write out how this is supposed to work, there's a good chance you actually haven't thought through the nuts and bolts of how it's supposed to work. Because as soon as you do that, and you have to look at it, you have to sketch it out, you start to realize where there may be opportunities, efficiencies, or maybe it's just not going to work.
Absolutely. Most of the time we're firefighting either a new inquiry or a client problem comes in, and if there's no process on how to solve it, then you're solving the problem live, and if you're not then documenting it, it's lost effort, I suppose, is a good way of thinking about it.
Completely. Recently bought 2 tools in AppSumo. One was called Malcolm, which is a really interesting frequently asked. Yeah, great name. And the other one I bought 3 or 4 years ago was Talify. Bought it for nothing, and it's one of those ones I've mothballed, and that's been incredibly useful, especially now. The linkages it's got and the webhooks it can do, it's literally creating draft emails in my inbox, which is exactly what you want. But
nice.
Couldn't do it unless you got it documented. Let's you mentioned in there, Dean, that there are certain things that you shouldn't be doing from day one, that you should hand over to your VA. Can we do a hit list? If you're an advisor and you're listening to this and you are actually doing this stuff in your business on a daily or weekly basis, you should stop.
And some of these the best one, like, you shouldn't have email.
Yeah, email. I agree. If you're the one triaging
Holmes at Wealth Network exists, the email doesn't go to me, it goes to a centralized box. Dean.Holmes at Absolute doesn't exist, it goes to a centralized box.
Yep.
You can't manage your own email.
Nope.
My favorite, the story that I tell about it, and it does light bulb sometimes, is that back in the day when you had to post a letter, the person that looked at it first was the male boy or girl.
Yeah.
Then it went to the department and it was read by the lowest person in the tree of that department. And then it might have went to the CEO's office and was read by the CEO's assistant. And then maybe the CEO read it. Okay. But with email, right now, first name dot last name at CBA, QBE, Origin, whatever it is, you can email the CEO. And so the communication is flipped exactly the wrong way. And that's why we have to get rid of email, is that emails need to be triaged from the bottom up, and therefore we only read the top ones. So that's created a lot of time, efficiency, and you've been able to do that. So that's a really good thing from day one.
Is it John Paul Doria He's the guy who sold Patron. He founded it. He was sleeping in the back of his car.
Yeah.
He sold, I think, 52 billion. He does not have a laptop. He doesn't have a phone. He doesn't have a iPad. And he was asked why not. He said, because if I did, I would be inundated with emails and I'd get nothing done.
Yeah. There's an Elon Musk story about that he just, all he does all day is walk around and have 6-minute meetings. Like, he just goes in and solves a problem and then moves on. So,
What's another thing that, you would suggest that everybody hands over or find someone else to do?
Well, we go like booking meetings, collecting information.
Yep.
Following up the whole admin process of implementing advice.
Following up, yep.
You don't need to do, like, Carl manages the HubSpot process. He's learned HubSpot and he deals with that marketing side of it.
So
you don't need to have your video. You don't need to do anything after you've recorded a video. You shouldn't be writing file notes anymore. They should be digital. Even if it's on the iPad, you can then record it and store it. So the point of why we keep saying now that the time is now, Stuart, in this context of the entrepreneurial revolution, is that the revolution is part tech and part time. So everything that you want to do, you go, well, is there an app for it? And most probably there is an app for it. And you've got to watch out that you don't get app fatigue in terms of how you build your ecosystem. So that's a lesson. And Stuart's he's got AppZoomer. So you've tested thousands of different things to come up with what you're at today. And we've got a technology principle that we've got some core things as well. Nothing is that revolutionary about what we do, but we keep it really tight. But there's always a tech solution. I always say to myself, I found something, does Microsoft do it? Because we keep that ecosystem very tight from a security perspective. But you've got to be saying, can my VA do it or can technology do it?
I'm going to be doing the drop-in a bit later. I'm going to be running through a framework called the Tech Map, which I think we may have done before. But it's interesting. I write a blog and it's lined up in our marketing thing. And I've seen recently a few people, this isn't having a crack at any other consultants, but they'll start getting on a podcast or they'll publish an article, which is like 10 apps advisors need to know about, or 15 or 20 apps or whatever. And the problem that really, and I used to do it, so I got to put my hand up and say, I'm part of the problem, or was part of the problem. The problem is if you get to a situation where all you're looking for is an app for that, there's not an app that will take charge of your time or manage yourself or say what you will and won't do. They'll only take what you do and make it possibly better, possibly easier, faster. And I think the challenge is if you're going out and looking for, have I got an app for that? Haven't got an app for that? You're starting from the wrong place. You got to start from, what am I trying to achieve? Because when you know what you want to achieve and you know that it's going to make things better, easier, or faster, then it makes sense to plug in an app. But if you're just going out and grabbing apps, and trust me, I've done it. If you're just going out and play, you are going to create a situation that is ultimately is going to get out of control. It's going to be less efficient than it is, and you're going to wonder what the hell your processes are supposed to do. Anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox now. Mate, this has been incredibly useful. Let's turn to sort of where you're at now, because we haven't even touched upon Jessica and Glenn. Glenn?
Yeah, Glenn. Yeah.
A bit of a blank there. But where are you going with this? I mean, what's the next step?
So the interesting step that I'm doing is that I am essentially loosely retiring as being an advisor. And so that's been an interesting journey as well, in terms of talking to my clients about it, then talking to the business about it as well, and saying, I need the time and energy to go and build this project 100%. So 30 June's very soon, and that's my line in the sand that 1 July, I'll still have my license, but I won't be taking on new clients in absolute. I won't be servicing the business in absolute. I'm dedicating the next 12 months to building the wealth network. And in that context, we always love to build the bicycle while we're riding it, in the context that we're taking on firms as now. So we're ready to start bringing on firms into this business, as well as leveraging it so that we can take on more firms over the next few years. And I'm dedicating my time, and I have 2 staff that work for me as well. We're dedicating to grow and support more advisors to start their own practices, to take that leap and say that they're an entrepreneur and actually deliver on that they can build successful businesses. And this whole thing about building a successful business is I'm not in the market to help you recreate your job. And so there's a bucket of advisors generally that are self-employed, but really they're just earning an income that's similar to an employee, but they have no time, annual leave, or support or flexibility. And so I'm focused on building advice practices that you don't have to work 6 days a week and 80 hours a week to earn the same money that you're earning as an employee. That we have systems, processes, and scale with staff so that you can have your time off as well.
So if somebody's listening to this, and I guess there's two possibilities here. Either the listener's going, I am really interested in potentially finding out whether this is the right thing for me, or alternatively, they're listening to this and they like what you're doing and they know of people who meet that profile, or they'd like to sort of help progress what it is. What can they do next? So
we do a couple of different things to get people interested in the process and understanding what we do. So we have webinars that I run on like a fortnightly basis to jump in and just learn a little bit about why it's a great time. So that's my soapbox, Stuart, of why it's the best time in the last 20 years to start your own business, why I believe that we can do it now compared to before, and we don't need the support of large corporates. So that's like my soapbox to go, if I'm a bit unsure, come along to one of those, and my job is to really inspire you to go, yes, I want to take the leap.
And where do I find out about those?
Go to our website, which is wealthnetwork.net.au. The other thing that I run, once you're interested but not sure on the entire process or what's involved in running your own advice practice, is that I run a masterclass, which is a 6-week lesson series essentially that you can register for. And during that process, what we do is we run across sort of 6 fundamentals of running your business: so vision and value, sales and marketing, building the healthy ecosystem, setting up your numbers, setting up your advice process, and bringing it all together as a plan. So the masterclass is almost like a set and forget module that if you're in your own business today but wanted a refresher on how all the elements might come together, I think we will do the masterclass and just learn from that. Okay. And then doing the masterclass also gets me to know all the people that are going through, and some of those will say, hey, Dean, I'm interested in joining the Wealth Network in the partnership program that we build.
Okay, cool.
So you can register for things on the website. If you're just interested in hearing more, there's like a general registration where I send information out. So I send out your today's thing to my network, and I'm always producing interesting content on my soapbox about stuff, and so you can just join that, and if you like what I'm doing, then you'll keep listening. Otherwise, there's a great big unsubscribe button at the bottom, and that's also okay.
Yeah. Why is it called a soapbox? I've always wondered.
I don't know. If the furthest back I know that it exists is that in Hyde Park in London.
Yeah, the speaker's corner.
Guys that stand on I think it's milk crates. Maybe it used to be a soapbox.
Maybe there's something about
someone on the call actually knows why and they can tell us. But that's the history.
Person sitting there going, I can't stand on that. That's not a soapbox. It's a or whatever. I think for me, the thing which I really connected with was this idea that don't focus on getting a power planner. Don't focus on getting a financial planning admin. What you need is a VA, someone who is skilled at basically freeing up you from just a general admin staff. That was really powerful. But I think the other thing which I learned today, which is, and I maybe knew it, but I didn't realize it was that strong, which was your thing is about working with people who are going for the niche. When you step back and look at it, it's kind of obvious, but it was incredibly useful. EOS is something I've also found incredibly powerful as well. Yeah. Matt, any final thoughts on where the industry's headed, or any sort of thing you'd like to share with people or encourage people to do next? Yeah, look, the biggest thing that's probably happened this week is just our friends at the FPA in relation to their vision of licensing of advisors.
Definitely doesn't change what we do, because I think we create a lot of value in much bigger way than what providing a license would. So I'm very happy in terms of what might happen in terms of the licensees space, in terms of what we're doing here to help advisors. And I want to encourage everyone that is an employee, and Stuart can attest to this as having the self-employed lifestyle as well, is that you can enjoy it. You do have the flexibility, and you do start to, after a year of hard work, don't get me wrong, have some of that space in your day or life to enjoy it. And so after this call, I walk down the road and I get my daughter and we hang out and we'll have lunch and I'll put her down to sleep. And the ability to do that is really important to me, and to create that flexibility. And that's the businesses that I want to help advisors create. There's still going to be cracking businesses inside, revenue-wise as well, but at the other end of the spectrum, you're not just an employee that's in their own business.
I totally agree. I like the entrepreneurial lifestyle can be one of two things. It can be something that frees you and empowers you, but it can also be something that traps you. But I think as one thing I've learned from working with you, Dean, is you have a lot of structure and you're very deliberate about the way you do things. And that's obvious in the way you've thought this through as well. So, mate, this has been incredibly insightful. Matthew says Google is a soapbox, is a raised platform which one stands to make an impromptu speech. The term originates from the days when speakers would elevate themselves by standing on a wooden crate, originally used for the shipment of soap. It's just the thing I'm wondering is, why does it have to be soap? Why is it not a banana box or a wine?
I do thank Matthew.
Appreciate
it. Know what it is.
Ross, a quick question.
Ross, it is absolutely the time for a one advisor business. So, and I do think it's all linked to having a partner. So in the like AMP's getting rid of one advice practices, right? They see it as a risk, and that's because they're not helping that advisor run the business. They're not in the business seeing all the problems that are going on, how we can solve them, etc. And so we are happy with one advisor practices to start and help them grow, but that is even more important in terms of systems, processes, and VAs and people helping you in your business, so that you're not the one-man advisor doing everything. Where did the one-man band come from? That's the other one. But the one-man band is, in the context of one advisor, is absolutely true, but you will have people and support around you, this healthy ecosystem that I talk about, to help you run your business.
It's interesting, because if you talk about a one-man band, it's very different to think about it's just one person running a business to there's one person who is the advisor and they're supported by a core team. And I think if anything has happened over the last 15 years, that's been hugely beneficial. There's been a lot that's happened. One of the benefits is, as a small business, as an individual, practitioner, you can now mobilize the resources that large organizations were previously only able to.
Yeah, and think about, I like to look at other specialists in terms of how they have structured themselves. And so if you go see a surgeon, a specialist surgeon, he's the only guy that operates, but he or she can have 3 or 4 staff, right? Just in the business of seeing you. And that's before you've even got into the hospital context. But he or she doesn't waste their time on filling out the file note or organize the appointment or charging you the money. And that's what I learned from doctors, especially in terms of their time allocation to their specialty. It's
true. It's been incredible. Elizabeth also said VA assistant really frees up time. Yeah, and I know you've really nailed this as well. Elizabeth's one of those people who she'll do it and then ask questions why later on, which is sometimes a really better way to do it than to just kind of unpack it.
Yeah. Mate, so if you want a VA, come and see me. I can help with that side of it as well to get that started.
Who are you? Do you want to share with me who you're using these days, or?
Yeah, for a firm called VA Platinum.
Okay, gotcha.
What I say about VA Platinum and Brian, who runs that, is that he cares about people. So we call them virtual assistants, but they're just your staff. And Brian gets it from that perspective. And when you have to get it from that perspective as well, is you're just hiring a team member that's in a different time zone.
Oh, good. Yeah.
But they do it. They breathe, eat, and have public holidays in Cebu today. it's the Philippine National Independence Day today. So, you know, you got to know and understand where your team is, but they're your team.
I think if you're able to do it as well, you realize that the best people are not the ones who live within 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers of your office.
Yeah.
They're the people who you can connect with all over the world. And I've been incredibly blessed. Jen's on the call, but yeah, there's just some great people. And
I bet he's on the call. So
there you go.
Hey,
listen, Dan. There we go. Guys, this has been useful. This has been incredibly powerful. Thank you so much, Dean. And really looking forward to what the next few years hold, man. It's going to be good.
Sure.
Ross's question, generalists versus specialists.
I think, well, it's sort of on my focus, Ross. It's the outcome is you become more of a specialist in the context of the clients that you want to target or the niche. So if you go, well, I want to look after left-handed vets, then that is not a generalist or specialist in terms of financial advice, but naturally you become more of a specialist in particular advice categories or structuring for that target market. But I think the generalist is definitely not dead from an advice perspective, because if you target, like I said earlier, engaged delegators, you might have a variety of different clients that you serve, and that's okay, because then the niche is a personality niche, which could be considered even more important than an occupation niche.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I add to it? It's interesting. Yeah. There's a lot of rubbish spoken about niching. The origin of niching comes from the 1950s in the advertising game, where a business would come to them and say, we want to sell soap. And they go, how much advertising money you got? 50 grand. Well, we can't target everybody. So who's the market that we're going to spend the money on? And we're going to advertise to that market, and they're going to be buying the product. That's what niching. It's not about building a business to only work with a certain people, you know, building soap that's just for left-handed vets. That's not going to work. And I think the point that I think people miss, and I think sometimes we just come at this from a solution perspective, because that's what our industry is built on. There's 3 different ways that you can specialize. You can specialize in your market, which is what people just tend to focus on. You know, I'm going to work with this kind of person. You can specialize in a mindset. The kind of people I work with think this way. I think you're probably your engaged validators. That's a mindset.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can work on a message. Now, in other words, you put something out that is so targeted, so clear, and it attracts certain people. Clearest thing
today, a good example of that is ESG investing.
Aussie home loans.
Yeah.
The message is, if you hate the banks, come to us, and they caught everybody. Now, for me, if you want to talk about the most powerful is when you get the congruence of those 3 things. Apple is a classic example. Their market, creatives. Their mindset is we're going to change the world. The message, do things differently. And they got that sort of congruence. So I guess for me, the conversation about specialists versus generalists is the easiest way to grow a business and get your message and connect. The most cost-effective and simplest way is to focus on who you want to talk to. Later on, when you kind of reach that when you get big, then you have to do this thing called crossing the chasm, which is where you've got to go from specialization to generalization, which is where you go from selling your products just to creatives to everybody. But right here and now, I think the question is not whether your business should be able to do everything. It's about what's the most effective way of you being able to deliver something cost effectively to a market who are willing to pay for it in a profitable way, and you're going to enjoy it. And that's, for me, there's no other way of looking at this about then my focus has to be specialization in some shape or form. I'm going to get off the soapbox, but I just wanted to reset that, because sometimes people think it's about only doing certain things, and it's not.
I'm with you.
Yeah, mic drop.
Sure. Thanks, Ross. We're out. That's. I still think that there's a requirement that we know lots, that we are still the general practitioners of the finance world. I would say broadly is still really important. There's no one else that takes that role in the professional space.
I agree. Dean, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'll catch up with you soon.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone.
See you 12, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So there you have it, another great Finnovator with Dean Holmes of the Wealth Network. I hope you took something from it. I took a bunch of things from it that I didn't realize previously. For a start, I'd only really got a high-level understanding of how important niching was to the model that Dean was rolling out. And Anybody who has spoken to me about niching would know I see it as being something that is just fundamental to success. It's such an easier way to grow a business, but it's one of those things I get pushback on. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've got more sessions coming down the pike. As I asked at the beginning, if you like the Finnovator, if you enjoy it, and you can intend to continue listening and you'd like to help us kind of get the word out, the best way you can do that is by jumping into iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, and jump in there and leave not just a stars review, but put some comments in there about what you like and what you don't, and that would be really, really appreciative. Final thing, I run most Fridays a live online virtual office space event called Connect Space. You can find out all about it by going to our website, aldere.com.au/upcoming-events. And you will find an event like Practice Factory, which we often run these Finnovators as live kind of webinar events, as well as a bunch of other stuff that's coming up. If you would like an introduction to what I do outside of just this podcast, if you want to understand a little bit more about the 300 or so businesses I've worked with over the past 5 years, the 9 strategic areas I work on, and a bit about the coaching and the programs I run, go and check it out. And I'd love to see you on one of our next events. Other than that, I hope you've got a good week planned. I hope you're having success and happiness and health, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Finnovator. Take care and be good.